team? It's your boy D Neal back with another reaction video. Here we are with our guy Johnny Harris. What Qatar doesn't want the world to see. World Cup 2022. I'm intrigued about this. I don't know anything really about Qatar, so I won't even say much of anything because I really don't know anything. But before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You know, subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you gotta do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me, human. I talk back. You guys got a favorite video suggestion? You can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. What we got?
Aimed it for good.
We found something in our reporting. Something happening here in the one big city in Qatar. A place the whole world is looking at right now. An invisible border drawn to trap human beings, to make them work, to make them build. I want to show this to you. So let me take you back to show you how we ended up sending a camera to someone and teaching them how to shoot undercover in Qatar, while simultaneously capturing interviews in rural Nepal, and how I ended up here, staring for hours at maps drawn by the Qatari government. All of this to shine a light on something that Qatar doesn't want the world to see.
All of these have been emptied very recently.
Hey, I need to show you something. I've been looking at maps of Qatar because the World Cup is going there. When the world is going to be fixated on one place, you got to look at all the maps. I've been on the government website of Qatar looking at their zoning maps. This is the city of Doha, the capital of Qatar. But look at this. The whole city is yellow, and there's this one little shape of blue. Doha industrial area. I know we're talking about zoning. I think something's up here. I've been trying to map this, like throw it on like my other tools to map it and see if there's like what this could be. And it's not totally making sense. It's kind of cut off from the rest of the city. There's another municipality kind of in between it and Doha, but it's a part of Doha. Usually when you have weird zoning like this, there's something going on. Since Qatar got awarded the World Cup in 2010, there's been all sorts of issues with their labor conditions and all of that. And I think this...
First, I just want to give a shout out to Johnny on just being able to like look at these maps. Like, because if I looked at a map, I would notice nothing. I would not notice anything. I'd look at the map and be like, oh, that's industrial area, and keep it. But he looks at these maps and he sees something is wrong, just based off the way that the area is. Like, something is wrong here. Like, that's crazy to me. That's awesome.
The World Cup in 2010 has been all sorts of issues with their labor conditions and all of that. And I think this has to do with that, but I don't totally know. The World Cup is happening in a few weeks. I want to go to this place. I need to reach out to Cami, one of our research producers. We're going to dive into this. We're going to figure it out. We're going to Doha, folks.
Oh, wow.
Hey Cami, I want to go to Qatar before the World Cup to look at this one part of the city that's completely zoned differently. I think it has to do with like the labor situation there. I can't not print it. I'm going there. We have to find a fixer, local producer, someone on the ground who can help us not get arrested. I will follow up tomorrow with more details. Going to Qatar. Ding, 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 ding.
Johnny, yes, let's do it. This sounds like a really great story. I'll happily go to Doha with you. I'll start researching right now.
I'm going to Qatar.
Yo.
Congratulations. I just want you to be smart.
I've been doing some research and I don't know how easy it's going to be for us to film places, especially in the industrial area. From what I've read, they're notoriously not very kind to journalists.
The best part about the Gulf is that these cities are like so like cartoonish. This is a hotel in freaking Doha. Look at this. Opening later this year. Can I stay in this hotel that looks like a freaking half pipe? I've always wanted to do this. I've never had an excuse.
Doha fixer number 1 referred me to someone else, so fingers crossed that Doha fixer number 2 is gonna work out.
Drones? Yes. Do you think they'll let me fly my drone in Doha?
No.
Why?
NATO countries are helping out doing anti-drone stuff because they're afraid of, you know, terrorist drones coming in. So
Wait,
like,
but what about just my DJI drone?
they're sending out anti-drone drones to net them.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What the?
Okay, not great news.
Anti-drones? Drones. To catch the drones that could be terrorist drones, but might not be terrorist drones, but ain't no drones flying except the anti-drones drones. Okay, keep it going.
drones to net them.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Okay, not great news. Our fixer hasn't found anybody in the industrial area who wants to talk with us. It's not looking likely that they're going to find anybody. I'm gonna keep trying to connect with anyone on the ground.
I think it's a hiding people thing. I don't know, but I'm trying to find a fixer to help me get in there.
You're gonna go in there.
Yes. I mean, it's not like some secret place.
You're supposed to be leaving in a week, and we haven't found any fixers. We haven't found any people on the ground who could help us. I'm just a bit concerned of our timeline right now.
I think we found someone, a fixer, who is deeply connected with the worker population in Doha and is potentially going to help us to get into the industrial area. We're meeting with him on a call in a few minutes. Here we go. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
Fine. Let me switch off the AC.
Did you get the proposal that we sent over of what
Yeah, proposal I read.
We're not trying to get any secretive footage. It's more just about life in the industrial area. I guess my question for you is like, if I went into the industrial area with my camera, not a big crew, but just my camera to go film.
What camera?
Like this, if I went into the industrial area with this camera and
You
filmed.
know, another thing, your skin color is also a problem, you know.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Yeah, it will make, you know, you will get undue attention.
From who do you think I would get undue attention?
You know, of course, the informers and, you know, these industrial area Asian towns are patrolled by internal security forces, Al-Fazar police.
So it's not very smart for me to go filming around in that area.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's why.
That's wild. So it's like, yeah, they just, I don't know, from the sense of him talking to him over this call, it's definitely a sense of hiding something. Definitely don't want them to film in this area, and especially someone of his skin color. That makes it more intriguing because it's like, now you know they're hiding.
For me to go filming around in that area.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's why we want to figure out a way.
Have you ever been to Doha? I mean, Qatar?
This is my first time. What do you think? Okay. This is not happening.
What happened?
This is not happening. If we can't do the shots, then the story doesn't work. Meaning, I won't go to Doha. So it's pretty important for us to know soon if this is feasible or if it's not feasible. Can you?
Yeah. I understand.
Well, it's really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for chatting. I can't safely go into this industrial area. Like, it's now clear to me. Like, every fixer has just been like, no. This guy just said it point blank. He's like, you're a white dude with a camera. Like, this is not safe.
It feels like if you go, you're just gonna get shots of shiny buildings and not actually gain access.
Yeah.
Which I guess
exactly.
could be cool.
No.
I mean, there's an option here where you try to find someone that could go in.
And then if we could get like a camera person in Nepal or Bangladesh or somewhere where workers have been and gone home, we could totally tell this story. The World Cup is literally a few weeks away. I got some work to do. The new plan, find someone on the ground in Qatar who will go into the industrial area and tell me why the hell the government is so afraid of me going in with my camera.
He got me as intrigued as possible into this story. I'm like, what on earth are they hiding? What is going on in this industrial area that they don't want people to see?
Oh, the government is so afraid of me going in with my camera. Okay. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something, which is that today's video is not sponsored by any brand. Sometimes we do really deep dives into complicated and sensitive topics. It's hard to find a sponsor when we make stories like this. I want to tell you about a way that you can support what we're doing. If you're not interested in hearing this pitch from me, that's totally fine. So I'm going to put a little bar down here on the bottom of the screen. For the rest of you that are still here, thank you. And I want to tell you about the Newsroom. The Newsroom is our community on Patreon, which is more and more turning into a place that I am very excited about. Journalism is changing.
This part, guys. But if you feel the need to, if you want to go support Johnny, definitely go support him on his Patreon or support him however you can.
To support. I want to get back into this story and show you how we ended up in this situation. Qatar is a tiny, super rich country in the desert, and it sits on the largest known natural gas field on Earth. Since their independence in 1970, Qatar got really rich really fast, leapfrogging the normal economic development process that countries go through as they grow. Usually as a country gets rich, immigrants from poorer neighboring countries migrate in to take lower-paying jobs required to keep the economy growing. Construction, hospitality, manual labor, caretaking, food services, you know what I mean. Every rich country experiences this. But in Qatar, all of their neighbors were also getting super rich super fast. So they started looking elsewhere for cheap labor. And soon there was a flow of people taking these jobs. But there's a tension here. Thanks to all this abundant oil and gas money, the Qatari government provides a luxurious welfare state to their citizens. Free healthcare, education, guaranteed jobs, subsidized housing, and literally they just get paychecks for being Qatari, for winning the fossil fuel jackpot. So
I would love to get a paycheck just for being Qatari. Here in America, nah, you don't get that. You don't get that here in America. I would love all of these things.
They just get paychecks for being Qatari, for winning the fossil fuel jackpot. So Qatar needed labor from other countries, but they didn't want to let these immigrants in on the sumptuous benefits of their welfare state. So they started using this system where employers could sponsor workers to come to Qatar to work. They wouldn't be citizens or anything close to it. They would be totally at the mercy of their employer. This was called the kafala system, and it was the foundation upon which Qatar built its country.
Wow, that's crazy.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
So this is a giant moment. I made a whole video about how this happened. I'm not going to go into it. But the fact is that as soon as Qatar won the World Cup,
Take it in your hands.
they had a lot of work to do. Because their country didn't have a lot of infrastructure, basically any infrastructure at all, to host.
And he has a video on this. Y'all let me know in the comment section if y'all want me to check that one out too. How Qatar won the World Cup. It was something along that title. If y'all want me to check that out, let me know. I got you.
Because their country didn't have a lot of infrastructure, basically any infrastructure at all, to host this thing. So wait, why were they chosen to host the World Cup if they didn't have any infrastructure? It's a long story. Again, I made an entire video about it. The fact is they needed to build a bunch of stuff in a very short time. So what they basically did is just ramp up the system that they already had, importing tons of labor from South Asia and Africa to come build their country, in this case, to build infrastructure for the World Cup. So yeah, I've been deep in the context and the history and the data for all of this, the stuff I can do from the office. But the fact is, time is running out. I need to find someone on the ground, someone in Doha, someone in Bangladesh or Nepal who can help me capture what is actually happening in these places, talk to the people there. I've been planting lots of seeds and some of them are starting to sprout. So we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
I've been talking with a journalist in Nepal who's really great and can connect us with workers who've returned home. He's done a lot of work on this and he can go out and shoot these interviews.
I'm finally just settling into the fact that I'm not going to Doha, and I'm disappointed in that because I wanted to be on the ground. I wanted to see this issue, but the right choice is to use those resources to engage camera people to go capture the right stories in different parts of the world, and that's what we're gonna do. Luckily, I've got Instagram. I also have miso soup. Hey Sandra, thanks so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. I'm doing this deep dive on the World Cup and put a call out for people in Doha to help me out here. I was gonna be going to Qatar and I was gonna be there next week. I'm not going, I'm now looking for people on the ground to help me. And as always, a bunch of people responded. I live in a world where I can just ask for things, and there's such a supportive community who wants to help with these stories, which is just an amazing reality. Probably 15 to 20 hours over the next 2 weeks getting some shots. Can I officially, hire you as a contractor to do this? And again, all of this is 100% anonymous. We will make sure that everyone is safe. Bingo. Yes, yes, yes. I am talking to somebody in Qatar who is a journalist who wants to help me out and is excited. Oh my God, I feel so much better. There was someone in Doha who has camera skills, who has language skills, who has journalism skills, who's excited to help and is just ready to go. Oh my gosh. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, everything is great.
Really appreciate you just like harnessing the energy on this and just being super down. And they have access to the industrial area. Yes. I want you to tell me how comfortable you feel about this process in terms of safety and security, what's sensitive, what's not. Just give me an overview of where some red lines are here. I found someone in Doha who I could give a camera to film. We're gonna call him Raj. We won't be showing his face. We'll change his voice because he could get in deep trouble for this.
First things first, everything is monitored, or like surveillance works everywhere in this country. No matter where I film, I'm also being filmed. Especially when we come to the industrial area, there are a few layers to what we can do and what we cannot do.
And over the next several weeks of talking to Raj, I realized that my fixation on this one blue square isn't actually the full story. It's just the beginning.
I plan to go on every street and film from inside the car, and I think that's the safest way to film and get like the vibe of what is it like to get inside the city.
We have someone on the ground with a camera that we bought them, line them out on how to shoot undercover.
I actually wanted to ask you, like, how do you get along shooting footages without getting noticed?
The key to filming without being seen is to look elsewhere. You're holding this thing like you're holding an ice cream cone. You're walking around and you're looking elsewhere. And then you just smoothly, put it away and you just get really comfortable with turning it on and off. They're going to the industrial area. They are very, very cautious for a very good reason. I would like you to shoot in 60 frames a second. I'd like you to shoot in 4K. This is going to be an amazing story if we can pull it off. The government of Qatar.
Oh, this is gonna be this is a crazy story, bro. Shout out Johnny Harris, bro, for going out and doing stories like this, where there is a high risk to these stories. But I feel like these stories are things like the world needs to see, and the world wants to see all these things that are going on. And Johnny Harris is giving it to us. Like, shout out to him and his team for this.
Hey, this is going to be an amazing story if we can pull it off. The government of Qatar is way more insane than I expected, and we're going to take a lot of precautions to keep everyone safe. We're going to show the world what Qatar doesn't want the world to see.
So I'm taking an Uber because frankly it's very unsafe to go on a bus. This is the bus stop where you get on a bus to the initial area. How much time does it take for you to get here? Like, it should be like 1.5 hours, right?
Raj was finally heading to the industrial area to show us exactly what this place was. But it wasn't until we heard from the people who had worked there and lived there that we began to see how deep this trap really was. Today is the day. In Nepal, a million miles away, they have been shooting interviews. Look, these are people who actually worked on the World Cup stadiums and are now back home in Nepal. You start to get to the human side of it, and it becomes way less theoretical. It's way less about these zoning maps and stuff, and it becomes about real humans, and this is where it starts to get heavy.
यो सानो बाबु पनि धेरै बिरामी भएको गर्थ्यो अब घरमा हुँदाखेरि पैसा नदेखिने उपचार गर्नलाई खर्च नहुने त्यही भएर
मेरो नाम विक्रम ताजपुरिया हो उमेर चाहिँ भयो 31 वर्ष भयो 3 वर्ष जस बस्यो त्यस्तो राम्रो चाहिँ लागेन के मलाई चाहिँ त्यहाँ चाहिँ कतारमा
So his son started getting sick. They didn't have the money to take care of him, so he had to go to Qatar for work to get that money. He said he didn't like it in Qatar very much at all.
त्यस्तो राम्रो चाहिँ लागेन के
He was
मलाई
there for 3 years.
कतारमा
ए हाम्रो घरको आर्थिक अवस्था खराब भएर पैसा कमाउनको लागि
As we've been setting up all these logistics and figuring all of this out, we've also been reporting and investigating the bigger context here. The industrial area, this little blue shape on the map, is actually just one of several mechanisms that the Qatari government uses to bring people over to their country, to trap them there, and then to exploit them to work, to build all the things they want them to build. Let me show you. Okay, so it's 2010, Qatar just won the World Cup bid. They have to build an unfathomable amount of infrastructure in a very short time. They do this by paying a bunch of people to go to these countries, to small villages in places like Bangladesh and Nepal, to recruit a bunch of workers to come to Qatar to build. And this is the first phase of what I'm calling the Qatar trap. Because it is here where these workers were told they had to pay a recruitment fee, usually like $1,000 to $4,000. Just to like get recruited to go to Qatar and work. These people don't have $1,000 to $4,000 lying around. So they often
What
would-
do you mean they have to pay a fee to go and work? Huh? Why would you have to pay? Nah, that already doesn't
Qatar
make
and work.
sense.
These people don't have $1,000 to $4,000 lying around. So they often would borrow money from family or take out a loan with really high interest rates. So even before they start working, they start their relationship with work in Qatar with debt. So now you have workers from Bangladesh, India, Nepal, all over this region flooding into Qatar to start building. As this is happening, Qatar implements a law. This is a law that's meant to protect families, okay? The law says that worker groups are not allowed to live within, quote, family areas in the city of Doha. It's a little ambiguous. Well, the government later clarified that what they're referring to is bachelors. People in Qatar that are single men. Okay, so these bachelors can't live in family zones. Where are these family zones that bachelors can't live in? Is it just like one little part of the city?
Yeah.
No. To clarify, they released a map that looks like this. Everything in yellow is a family zone. A place where bachelor workers are not allowed to live. If you project it onto like a real map, you will see that this is the entire city basically. And then they reserved one little plot of land, a city away, still zoned for Doha, this little blue shape where these bachelor workers can live. Oh, but they made a few exceptions. Anyone who works at like markets and barber shops, restaurants, oh, and white collar professionals who are bachelors can also stay in the family zones. So really these working bachelors is just a euphemism for guys who look like this.
I swear to God. Bro, this is wild. This is wild so far, yeah. And so they're basically bringing these men who can't really afford. They're going over there because they need money. That they need money. They're in rough financial situations where they have to go and earn money for their family, for treatments, for all these different kind of things. Then they're bringing them over there and they're saying, well, you can only stay in this certain zone. You can't live in these family zones. Are off limit. You can only stay in this certain area. After you already make them pay $1,000 to $4,000 recruitment fee.
Really, these working bachelors is just a euphemism for guys who look like this. Guys who are there doing construction, who Qatar does not want to see in their shiny downtown area, so they reserved them a spot out here in the desert next to the sewage pond. This is the map that sent me down the rabbit hole, and now I see it for what it is. I knew something was up. I look at a bunch of these zoning maps. They're using this to put the people that they don't want to see in the places that will never be seen. So now these guys are already laden with debt because of the recruiting fees, and now they're relegated and trapped into this part of the city. The part of the city that I was not allowed to go to without getting arrested. This is where Raj is on his way to. This is where we're getting footage from.
So they can't even go into like the family areas of the city? Not that they can't live there, but can they like not even go in there?
This is where Raj is on his way to. This is where we're getting footage from.
50 minutes into the ride, and we're kind of starting to see these kind of accommodations where the workers live. This is one of those buses that the workers that live in the industrial area use to commute. Today is Friday, and it's a leisure day for a lot of workers. As you can see, a lot of clothes that have been washed and left in the sun to be dried.
So this is the industrial area. It's the thing I've been thinking about for a very long time, and I'm finally seeing the footage from inside. And I have to say, it's not anything super surprising. This is kind of anticlimactic in the sense that I'm just looking at like a kind of dusty, dilapidated part of town with a bunch of buildings that look the same. And yet, I now know a lot more about what this place represents. Look at this. The industrial area isn't just far away, it's completely cut off. Here's the metro system, brand new, that they were planning to build for the World Cup. This is the whole system, connects all of the stadiums and the city. You can see that they planned a couple of these lines to go out to the industrial area. This would connect the industrial area to the city. And yet, these lines aren't actually built. They're gonna start on these right after the World Cup is over. Wow. So yeah, this place is just like completely disconnected. I think I now see that, and it's not just disconnected unintentionally. This is very systematically, intentionally disconnected from the rest of the city. Our interviews in Nepal gave us some clarity on what it's like to live out there.
एक दिन पनि कतै नगयो रुममा मात्र खाने सुत्ने त्यो छुट्टीको दिनमा त्यही रुममा सुत्ने खाने त्यस्तो थियो.
The next phase of the Qatar trap.
In his 10 months in Qatar, went nowhere the whole time but his room, eating, sleeping in the room during holidays. They're disconnected. They're disconnected from everywhere else, and definitely systematically planned for it to be that way. For them to have those metro lines there and decide, well, we're gonna start working on those after the World Cup. Definitely systematically planned, bro. This is just mind-blowing.
The next phase of the Qatar trap has to do with how these people were exploited, how their rights were trapped, has to do with how these people were exploited, how their rights were taken away from them to force them to work. To build the World Cup, these workers were forced to work in very horrible conditions. Look at the temperatures in Doha in the summer. Getting close to 50 degrees Celsius, close to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. They literally have air-conditioned outdoor spaces. Look at that, air conditioning outside on wheels. The stadiums themselves will have air conditioning. And yet these workers are out there doing like manual labor in this heat.
जुत्ता लाउँदा पनि अब सेफ्टी सुज हुन्छ नि उतै लाउँदाखेरि पुरा पानी नै पानी हुन्थ्यो क्या यसरी खोलेर फाल्नुपर्छ पानी त्यस्तो गर्मी हुन्थ्यो.
A lot of workers report being treated like animals.
They said their shoes would fill up with sweat, and they would have to take them off and dump to get all of the sweat out. It was that hot, that sick.
त्यस्तो गर्मी हुन्थ्यो.
A lot of workers report being treated like animals, being yelled at and bossed around in totally inhumane ways.
काम गर्ने बेलामा त त्यो फोरमेन आउँथ्यो. फोरमेनले चाहिँ त्यही कराउँथ्यो छिटो काम गर किन उ गर्छौ के रे अल्छी गर्छौ भन्थे क्या.
Behind these walls, the conditions that these people were made to live in and really given no choice on where they could live are horrendous.
टोयलेट बाथरुमको त अब कुरै छोड्दिन तपाईको रुममा त तपाईको उडुस हुन्थ्यो नि.
नराम्रो चाहिँ एउटा रुममा 6 जना 7 जना 8 जना राख्नु रुममा. यहाँ किचन पनि त्यस्तै थियो खाना बनाउने अब एउटा किचनमा एउटा रुम थियो सानो अनि.
Journalists and human rights organizations have actually gotten cameras back here to actually show what that looks like. The heat and
this is sick, bro. Like this stuff really makes you mad. Like this stuff upsets you. It's crazy. It's 6 to 8 people in one room. Bathrooms are beyond words. Bed bugs everywhere. Like the fact that they had to live in these conditions are ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous.
Human rights organizations have actually gotten cameras back here to actually show what that looks like. The heat and conditions got so bad for some workers that they never returned home.
मलाई जाने बेला पनि अब त्यस्तो खासै रोगहरु पहिलेदेखि नै त्यस्तो निरोगी मान्छे नै हो त्यस्तो रोगहरु केही नै देखाकै थिएन. ड्युटी गएर आउनु भएको थियो रे कस्तो छाती चस्के जस्तो भयो भनेर साथीहरुसँग कुरा गर्नु भएको रे कुरा गर्दाखेरि मोबाइल हेरिराख्नु भएको थियो रे मोबाइल एकासी यस्तो छातीमा झरेपछि चाहिँ साथीहरुले आत्तिएर के भयो यसलाई ओए भनेर बोलाउँदाखेरि उहाँ नबोल्नु भएको रे त्यस्तो उहाँलाई त्यस्तो होला जस्तो कहिले नै सोचेको थिइन मैले त.
So I'm not sure if that was her son or her husband that she lost, but just working in these ridiculous conditions. And she said before he left, like he was always healthy, there was nothing wrong. But then he just felt this discomfort in his chest, His friends kept calling him and never heard back from him, and you know it's due to the conditions that they're working in. They're inhumane conditions. It's sick.
त्यो गफ लागेको होला साथीहरूले आउनुहुन्छ होला जस्तो लाग्थ्यो मलाई ल्याउँदाखेरि हस्पिटलको रिपोर्टमा चाहिँ हार्ट अट्याक भएको भन्ने
Thousands of totally healthy young men died while working in these conditions. We'll likely never know the true cause of death because instead of a real investigation, the Qatari authorities come out and use these vague classifications like heart failure and natural causes as the cause of death. Doing this robs the family of answers on why their loved one came home in a box.
That's really sick.
So if these employers are so bad, why don't these employees just change jobs? The answer is they can't. For a long time, legally, they couldn't. Because the next part of this trap has to do with paperwork.
तो हामीहरू जाँदै बित्तिकै अब कम्पनीले पास नयाँ मान्छेको के पेपर आउँदैछ यसमा कति महिनाको के छ अब अझै अरबीमा लेखेको हुन्छ पुरै अब के पेपर हुन्छ साइन गराउँछ यताउति सबै गराउँछ.
Oftentimes, this paperwork would stipulate that these workers can't change jobs without the permission of their employers. So the status of these workers who were trapped in their little blue box on the outskirts of the city was completely at the mercy of their employers. If they left their job, they would be considered a foreign immigrant illegally there and could be arrested and put into jail.
अब कम्पनीले हामीहरूको पासपोर्ट पनि कम्पनीले राखेथ्यो.
Wow.
Just one more layer of the trap. And then there was the fact that these employers would often not pay their workers for months at a time, withholding wages from them and thus increasing their leverage and power over them. And with no recourse, these workers couldn't do anything about it. So yes, we are now talking about forced labor with no compensation, a euphemism for modern day slavery. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's literally...
No, that's exactly what it is. And that's sick. Like even watching this, it's sickening. They take their passports when they arrive, give them contracts in a completely different language and tell them to sign. And in these contracts, they're not allowed to leave their job or switch jobs unless the employer gives them permission. And if they do, then they are now known as a foreign and illegal immigrant over there and can be arrested and thrown in jail. And on top of that, they would take their wages for months at a time and not pay them. Like, this is honestly sick, man.
A euphemism for modern day slavery. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's literally what is happening here. Not to all workers. There were workers who had great conditions and who got paid on time, but this system enabled firms to so deeply exploit workers because it gave them so much power over them and so little recourse for these workers to complain or do anything without being punished or arrested. So with no other options, some workers turned to their last resort, protesting.
म स्टाफ आन्दोलनमा 2-3 पटक गएको त्यो दुईतिर रोडमा जाने अनि बसले पुलिस आएर भन्छ कि दिन्छ तिमीहरूलाई सेलले अनि काम पनि दिन्छ भनेर आश दिने मात्रै.
They are blocking traffic. Central Doha. But don't be fooled here. This wasn't some worker uprising. This type of thing is illegal in Qatar, an authoritarian police state where assembly like this is totally not okay. So what would happen is the police would show up, squash these protests, tell them that everything was going to be okay and they would get paid, and then deported a huge number of these people, got them out of the system so that the status quo could remain.
Just dehumanizing people that belong to a certain race and are brought here for certain purposes is not justified by any means.
Thanks to international scrutiny, Qatar started to make some reforms. They realized this wasn't going to fly if they were going to host the World Cup. So they started instituting things like worker hours that were not in the heat of the day, mandatory water on site so these people could stay hydrated, a minimum wage, changing the law so that people could technically change jobs without permission, compensating families for people who died working. All of this looked great on paper, but human rights organizations like Amnesty International actually have looked to see if those policies have trickled into reality, and you know what I'm going to say, they haven't.
Yeah, so they just said they were going to start doing a bunch of stuff because they started getting scrutinized by the rest of the world for what was going on. But they were just empty promises that they were making. Like the police kept making empty promises that they would get paid and all that, but then would just deport them so there wouldn't be a large group of people protesting, and the status quo could remain. And then they told these people like they're gonna introduce all these laws and they're gonna do all these things to help their situation, but they didn't.
And you know what I'm gonna say, they haven't.
Here's the Sahni and Income. This is big walls. A lot of people live here as well.
So yeah, I really understand now what this little blue box is for, what it represents. The authorities in Doha are getting ready for this World Cup, and as the event approaches, they are making sure that anyone who belongs in this box stays in that box. Okay, this is insane, the timing of this. This is literally happening right now.
The whole thing has just been wiped out by some weird phenomenon.
I just got a message from Raj that they are evicting workers from the city, people who are living in the yellow area illegally because of the law are being evicted. It's a couple weeks before the World Cup, and so the timing is not surprising that they are cracking down.
Locks everywhere. Everything looks like it has been done really quick.
Literally catching people and putting them into Shanaya, which is the industrial area. I'm trying to get footages of them being evicted because a lot of them are being evicted like just with 2 hours of notice. That's what I'm trying to do now.
This is so clear to me what's happening. They're clearly starting to really enforce this like family zoning thing to get anyone who they don't want to be seen out of the center of the city. I've never done a story like this before. This is developing like day by day, and all of this reporting that we've done, I'm now seeing it play out in real time as the city prepares for the World Cup, using all of these laws to continue to hide these people, to get them out of view as all of these international visitors prepare to come.
It feels so empty, and it's only the small houses that have been evacuated.
Well, we got to the bottom of it. We know why this exists, the way it's drawn, what it means, who it's for, what it's meant to do. I did not expect that. I know what's happening behind those walls, how those people are trapped, how their families miss them, and how some of them might never come home.
नभएर यस्तो गर्नु पाइएको भएदेखि एकै ठाउँ बस्न पाइएको भएदेखि परिवार खुसी हुन्थ्यौँ, छोराछोरी पनि खुसी हुन्थे। अब अरूको अगाडि पनि फल्नाको बाउ छैन भन्ने त्यस्तो धारणा हुन्थेन, छोराछोरीलाई नि मेरो बाबा छ भन्ने महसुस हुन्थ्यो।
Now let's be clear, this happened well before the World Cup ever came to Qatar. And what I fear is that once we all move on, once these few weeks of playing football are over, we'll forget about everything we saw. And Qatar will have no incentive to actually do anything about this. And they'll go back to what they've been doing for decades, deceiving these workers, trapping them in their country, exploiting them, and then hiding them from view.
This is legit, like, honestly, like, scary to see. It's scary to think about. It's crazy. It's honestly crazy. That's all we got for this one. You guys got a video you want to see me react to, drop it. You can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You can subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you gotta do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. It's your boy Neal. Out.